Welcome to our discussion of the Korban Pesach as a model for Pesach 2020. We need to understand what the nature of the Korban Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, is. Paschal Lamb is no small thing if you want to understand Passover. I mean, why do you think you call it Pesach? Because it's the Paschal Lamb. What do you think the centerpiece of the Pesach Seder used to be? It was the Pesach. Pesach is the Korban Pesach, the offering of the Paschal Lamb. We need to understand the nature of it. If we can understand that, we will understand something very significant about this Pesach 2020. General, we need to understand there are two types of sacrifices. We need to understand where does the Paschal Lamb fit in. There's Korban Yachid and Korban Tzibur. There's a personal sacrifice and there's a communal sacrifice. The communal sacrifice is on set times. Every day there has to be a morning sheep and afternoon sheep. Shabbat, 2 extra sheep. Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, holidays have special sheep, cows, rams, special sacrifices. And it pushes off Shabbos. It's so set that if it's Sukkot and it falls on Shabbat, you have to bring the sacrifice of Shabbat, of Shabbat and also of Sukkot. So the congregational sacrifice pushes off Shabbat. Also, it's done corporately, meaning there's no owner of the daily offering or of the offering of Shavuos. It's given by the half shekel of every single Jew. And together, there is this one sacrifice on behalf of everybody. The individual sacrifice is also clear. An individual has to bring a sacrifice or wants to bring a sacrifice. He or she committed a sin, they have to bring a chatas, a sin offering. He or she just wants to bring a gift, shlamim, to share with the Kohen, to go and eat in Jerusalem. So then he or she decides to bring a sacrifice. So that's a Korban Yachid, that's a personal sacrifice. So what about the Paschal Lamb? Is it a personal sacrifice or is it a communal sacrifice? So the Rambam says that, well, there are different types of sacrifices and the Pesach is in an unusual category. It's a Korban Yachid domeh leKorban Tzibur. It's a personal sacrifice because it's brought by one person, a family. And it's similar to a communal one. Why? It has a set time. It's a very set time. You have to bring it that day, the eve of Pesach. This year is going to be Wednesday afternoon. And then you have to eat it at that night, at the Seder night. This year will be Wednesday night. So it's a very set time. And in that sense, it's like the communal sacrifice. But is it really communal? It's really brought by individuals. Torah, in talking about the Paschal Lamb, speaks on the one hand about families and neighbors getting together to share a sheep, but on the other hand they say, the whole entire congregation of the community of Israel, Kahal Adat Yisrael, they all gather and they slaughter the Paschal Lamb. Interestingly enough, the rabbis don't interpret that to mean that they all do it together. They say, look, you can't get all the Jews in the sanctuary at one time. It's a small sanctuary, really, compared to maybe a gigantic synagogue. It's not that big. But they would have 3 kitot. They would have 3 sessions, an early, after, middle, and late session for the Paschal slaughtering and sprinkling of the blood. So actually, even that verse itself, which sounds so communal, the rabbis say it's really 3 different little communities. Now, Rabbi Menachem Kasher says, based on this dichotomy and this strange nature of the Korban Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, we can understand an old debate. 2,000 years ago, there was a man named Hillel, the greatest sage at that time. And when he first came to the scene, he convinced the Bnei B'Tera, the people who had previously been in charge, they were from the northern Jews, and they thought that if a Paschal Lamb fell on Shabbat, if the eve of Passover was Shabbat, they wouldn't bring the Paschal Lamb. And Hillel came and said, what are you talking about? And he explained that you're wrong. The Paschal Lamb is brought whenever it is, even on Shabbat. Festival b'moado, it has to be at its time. So Rabbi Kasher says, I get it. Those previous scholars, or not such big scholars, they thought that a Paschal Lamb was an individual sacrifice. And who brings an individual sacrifice on Shabbat? On Shabbat, you can only bring a communal sacrifice. But Hillel taught them, no, it's a strange kind of a thing. It's on the one hand a communal sacrifice, but it's also an individual sacrifice. It's communal enough to push off the Shabbat. There are 2 interesting debates in the Talmud that relate to this question of what is Korban Pesach. Is it is it a communal or a private offering? One is, could you slaughter it just for one person? What if I say, it's a private offering, I want to bring this lamb? You say, excuse me, you're only one person, there's a lot of meat on that lamb, you can't eat the whole thing, there's only one night to eat it. What are you doing? A person can have one steak, 2 steaks, 4 steaks, but you can't eat a whole lamb. So, what do you? How many rib chops, lamb chops can you have? So can you do it? So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you can't do it. It has to be at least with the family. And Rabbi Yossi says, no problem. You can do it on your own. Also seems to reflect a debate about how individualistic is it. And on the other direction, saying that it's communal, Rabbi Nassan, one of the rabbis in the Talmud, says, Kol Yisrael Yosem Pesach Echad, that it says all of Israel could shech. It means that all of Israel could shech one lamb. All of Israel could do one lamb. You don't have to eat it. You can be vegetarian. You don't have to even eat it. There's one lamb for everybody. It's good enough. So that seems to reflect a more communal kind of an idea. And the truth is, there's an interesting continuum. There are individual sacrifices. There are some that are done together. Everyone's doing it, but it's not really communal at all. Like everyone came to Jerusalem, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and brought sacrifices with it, but they didn't do it together. Then there are things which are done in groups, families, neighbors. And today we have an idea of a minyan, a gathering of 10 people. We hope we'll be able to do that again soon. And then we have the idea of tzibur, of an actual, absolute corporate community of Israel. So what is the Korban Pesach? It turns out that the Pesach is a transition from individuals. See, when they were slaves, they were just individuals. When you're a slave, you can't even send a phone call to somebody else. You have no connection with other Jews. You're very isolated. So then we're going to become a congregation. We'll stand at Mount Sinai as one person, one heart. The Paschal Lamb is a mavar. It's a transitional type of stage where you gather as a family. Everyone does the same thing, but we do it sort of individually. It's not really a community. And in fact, this may explain why it says no one should go out of their house that night. That night they all had to stay in their house. There are many interpretations. The Medrash says, it's dangerous. I mean, once the angel starts killing people, so then, if you're outside, who knows what's going to happen? It's like the coronavirus. You could catch it. The Gemara in Baba Kama 68 says, when there's a dever by you, when there's a pestilence, you got to stay inside, quarantine. And some people say that if God was the one who was bringing the plague, then you're not allowed to go see God. So they had to stay inside. It was too holy. Maybe they didn't want to look like slaves who were running away. If they go out at night, it'll look like they're running away from Egypt, like bandits. My father, of blessed memory, liked to say that the night before a slave leaves, sometimes he could wreak havoc on the community. So he says, no, stay home, no looting, no stealing. Ibn Ezra says that if they did go out, they would have been clobbered because everyone's losing their firstborn and they blame it on the Jews. They would kill them, be a pogrom. Finally, Rashbam says that, what do you mean? The blood is on the doorpost. If you leave the doorpost, you're out of the protection zone. But I'd like to suggest something else. Don't leave until the morning because the Jews were not ready yet. By the morning, the Jews would leave Egypt as a community. 50 days later, they'd stand at Mount Sinai as one person with one heart. But right now, you're not ready for that. Right now, start as a family. That's how the Jews started. We started with Abraham, Sarah, and the son Yitzchak. You start as a family. And from the family, Shivim Nefesh, the family of Jacob, 70 people. From the family, then you transition to a nation. And that night, the first Seder night in Egypt, our role was to be a family, to gather a few people together, maybe a few neighbors together. And that was how we would begin the notion of community. Right now we're having Seders distance from each other. My family, we're split in 3 different places where our family's going to celebrate 3, 5, 7 different places. All the people would usually be together. We're in 6 different places. My mother is celebrating all by herself. Many people are without any family at all. No one's inviting them because we have the coronavirus. We don't want to infect anyone. And that's the proper thing to do. So How do we understand this? Well, we have to realize that that's what the Paschal Lamb is. The Paschal Lamb says, start with yourself. Reb Nassim says Reb Yossi says that you could check the Paschal Lamb just for one person. It's the beginning. Try to get a hold of yourself. Try to ground yourself. Try to get your family together. If you're just you and your wife, you and your husband, try to get that family unit where it should be. If it's just you and maybe one child, bond together a little more. Make that family unit even stronger. And then and only then we'll be ready to join together eventually when the coronavirus comes to an end and when the vaccines are made and when we're able to get back together. Then we'll be able to join as a community. But let's work now in our families, because the building block of a congregation, building block of a community, the building block of a nation is family. It all starts with family. It starts with Abraham, Sarah, starts with a family. Let's get our families in shape. Let's get ourselves in shape, because it all starts with us. And whatever Seder you're having, whether it's by yourself, let's build ourselves, whether it's a small family, let's strengthen that family. And from there, hopefully, one day, we'll be able to return to family. We'll be able to return to community. We'll be able to return to congregation. We'll be able to return to nationality. And then we'll be able to have not just a Korban Yachid, not just an individual sacrifice, we'll be able to have communal sacrifice. And it's the Paschal Lamb that's the transition from the individual to the community. Let's hope this transition goes very well this Pesach. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfar Beth Lameth congregation for a discussion of Pesach, and join us each week for a discussion of the holidays and the Pesach. And thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, who continues to produce these videos under these very difficult conditions. Thank you.